Hey guys, all right. So sorry about that. I went back to Old Faithful. I thought this new thing was gonna work. Unfortunately, I didn't choose to follow my mother's wise sayings. If it's not broke, why fix it? So I do apologize about the lack of audio. Like I said, I was trying a new device, and I'm not really quite sure what happened, but we're gonna make it go. So, anyways, so, like I said, we have on Miss Martin, Miss Aisha Martin. She's a licensed clinical social worker practicing in Washington, D.C., in the DMV area. And she is the founder and CEO of her own practice. That's Aisha. We are glad to have her on tonight. And she brings a wealth of information, experiences, and working with children, working with families. And this time of year is incredibly important to talk about families. The second person that we have on is Mr. Donzell Lampkins, who is also a licensed clinical social worker. He hails from Chicago, Illinois. He comes with a wealth of experience from working with families and also adolescents and college age students. So I'm really, really, really excited about having them both on. I hope that you all enjoyed the music when you heard it the second time, as opposed to the other time wondering what the hell is he saying. Because we're going to bring them both in. But first, let's go to the phone. Let's hope it plays. All right, so welcome to the show, both Aisha and Donzell. Thank you so much for your patience. So we've worked through these technological issues. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I can't complain. It is what it is. Donzell?
I'm doing well, thank you, Dr.
Okay, so I will allow you to introduce yourself. Donzell, I'll let you start, and then we'll go with Aisha. Please introduce yourself, tell people what your work history and anything you want them to know.
Sure. Hi, my name is Donzell Lampkins. You can call me Don. Originally from Chicago, Illinois, but have lived in rural America my entire adult life. I was practicing in Central Illinois for a number of years before transitioning to Iowa, where I'm currently directing a university counseling center here, along with my wife and son, who I can't refer to as a newborn anymore, as he is over the age of 1. So.
Right. And Donzell, if you could speak up, by the way, I know that's like your thing as a therapist. You want to be very thoughtful and therapeutic. But on live streaming, people respond to energy and loudness and craziness because it makes them feel that they're part of the experience and engaged. That's what YouTube tells me.
Sure.
So, Aisha, we're going with you.
My name is Aisha Martin. Sure. I am just opened my own private practice in Washington, D.C. It's called Woodley Park Clinical Services. Before that, I worked as a school social worker for DCPS, and I did most of my initial work at Child and Family Services in Washington, D.C. So I love the DMV, and I like to help all the families as much as I can. And so whatever I can add to this conversation, let's go.
Okay. So first question for you then, Aisha. This is supposed to be the happiest season of the year. People should be like falling all over each other with happiness and excitement. But that isn't the case for so many Americans. Some research shows that almost 60% or 50% of Americans feel incredibly stressed. 30% of Americans even report feeling either an exacerbation in their depressive symptoms during this time of year. Why do you think that is?
Well, this time of the year, especially after Thanksgiving, you get like a 1-2 punch because then you have Christmas and then New Year's. And everywhere you look, it's just merry and cheery. You have the radio, you come outside, you see your neighbors' houses, you look in the stores, in the grocery store. It doesn't matter where you go, it's throwing up the holidays. And what people don't realize is that not everybody has good memories from the holidays. So sometimes people are grieving like a loss or financial hardship, or it gets dark early and you wake up and it's dark and it's gray. And so it's not always as cheerful as people wish that it would be. And I think most of the time it's just because people don't have the same experiences around this time. So everything you bring to the table contributes to how you feel about this time. So if you've had a bad situation, a bad breakup, someone passed away, you lost your job, this will all trigger the blues.
You bring up something interesting, Donzell. Do you think that African Americans around this time of year possibly experience even greater anniversaries of like loss, like Aisha was basically saying, you know, it isn't always tied to great history like loss, death. Do you think as African Americans we experience that more because of like communal, or no? What do you think?
I don't know that there's a racial component, but I do know that there's a, similar to what Aisha was saying, you get the 1-2 punch when, you know, after Thanksgiving you have Christmas and then New Year's Eve and New Year's. But one of the things is that when you think about the time period for the first, 10 and a half months, your financial situation is normal, and then just the overall atmosphere of America is pretty normal. But then there's this abrupt change after Thanksgiving, and it's just a lot hit you at once, and so there's a lot of external pressure to conform and assimilate, but there's also this internalized pressure of going from not having to buy anyone gifts really, with the exception of maybe a few birthdays if you're into that, to now I have to buy this person a present, that person's a present. You go to a holiday party and everybody's doing the, what is it called, the white elephant Christmas, I believe.
Oh yes. Or Chinese Christmas, right?
So yeah, so you have like the Chinese Christmas, you have the white elephant Christmas, you have these dinner parties, and there's this pressure to, I have to get an outfit for this and I have to get an outfit for that, although no one from this first party is going to be at the next party that I'm going to. And so there's just a lot of different, I think, social components that a person may have to navigate. And then my final thought would just be, we live in a digital age, and so there's a digital pressure to show up and perform as well. So as you're looking online and you're seeing people post, I was one of the people who made a post in front of the tall Christmas tree decorated, and I just so happen to be in that space of my life to be able to enjoy that. Like, Christmas has always been a great time for my household. And so that's a tradition that I continue with my family now. But people see that, and now they feel like they have to have that, when in all actuality we really just have to be authentic with ourselves and really stick to what feels right for us.
Right. And thank you for bringing up that about being authentic to ourselves. and for those around us. So this show is centered about basically providing people with information, because both, as all three of us as therapists, we have private practices, we see patients. What are you seeing in terms of patients that really help move them through this period, Donzell?
Mm-hmm. I think that one thing I'm seeing is that clients or patients are starting to realize that they can spend the holidays on their own terms,
Mm.
and they can do what feels right for them. So I mean, I had a client recently share, that, oh, things were going to be awkward because they're dating someone that people didn't think they should be dating, and I was like, well, does it feel right? You know, does it feel wrong to you? And they said no. And so, we were able to get to a place of, you know, comfort with our own decisions and our own feelings, recognizing that we don't have to adopt or adhere to the emotions or conflict of others.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So people are recognizing that it's okay to spend time alone during the holidays, and that they don't have to live up to the expectations
Whether
of
it's
others. It's kind of like what you're saying.
whether it's alone, like people are taking charge of their experience, and so they're, instead of going around people that they really don't want to be around, they're
Okay.
spending it with their friends, and
Hmm.
they're spending it with their lover. They're spending it, you know instead of going back home, they're staying on campus, or they're going to another state and they're spending it with their roommate and their family, versus going home to their own family. They're spending it with their chosen family.
Mm. Next question for you, Aisha. Definitely, the ball is now in your court. What are you thinking as you hear that? Considering that you worked, especially like with children and families in this system, so you work with like both impoverished families and probably those on the other end of the spectrum, families that are well off. I would think that there's a lot of pressure for families to perform. What do you think, Aisha, in terms of what you are seeing in your practice and what's helping families get through that, or couples?
So what I encourage people to do is to create their own tradition. So I think sometimes there's a pressure to do what the generation before you did, or do what your neighbors are doing. And so I really encourage people to think about what's important and then choosing their own tradition. So maybe you don't have the means to go to all these parties. So maybe what you do around the holidays is you handwrite someone a letter, or you are baking cookies for people instead of giving like large gifts. For my clients that are lonely around this time, I always encourage them to get involved, because again, you always feel like the holidays are togetherness and people feel like they're around so much of their family. Well, not everybody has family. And so we've been talking about like, well, how can you still feel a part of the holidays without having a chosen family? Because some people don't have that. So we talked about volunteering. This is the time where most places will welcome anybody through their door to help wrap gifts, to help pass out gifts, to help pass out flyers, to help do different things, volunteering at soup kitchens, but doing things that, if you don't have the tradition that you normally have, to create your own. And that's with your children too. I think a lot of the times we forget this. Children want to receive, but it's also about giving. So how are you teaching your children about giving? Maybe you didn't grow up in a family that had you guys volunteered on Christmas Eve, or you did different activities. So I really encourage parents to really figure out like what is going to be your tradition for your family. It doesn't have to cost money, because you can volunteer and that's free. And then for people that are lonely around the holiday, I always encourage them to find things to make them get up and get out, because if you're lonely and you're staying in and you're watching Christmas movies and only being with yourself, it's going to put you in a deeper depression.
One of the things, and I'm going to bring this up for Aisha because I love this thing that you put together for clients and patients. The first one was about getting out of the house. And
yes.
Talk more about that, about getting out of the house. How do you create those experiences that make you still fulfilled but still kind of like help you be your authentic self, like Donzell we're talking about?
Well, let's just talk about this time of the year. Like I said in the beginning, you wake up and it's dark, you come home and it's dark. So you only have a limited amount of time where it's bright. And, for years, researchers have said sunlight can make you a little happier. So just getting out of the house during hours of the day, even if it's at lunch, take a walk, go down the street, just get up and get out, because the more that you're active and the more that you get out of the house and out of the bed and out of your rut, the more you can feel that you're a part of this season. You don't have to be in the mall shopping. You could just go for a walk. But again, isolating yourself within your four walls is not going to help you get out of the holiday blues. So you need to get some sunlight. You need to get up and get out of the house.
Right. And I'm bringing up this so people can see your slide. So talk us through these 10 things that you put together, Aisha, for the holiday blues.
Yeah. So the first one was get out of the house. So I just talked about that. Another one that you could do is clear the clutter. And I mean physical clutter and emotional clutter. Get rid of the things and the objects in your home that aren't bringing you joy, along with the people that don't support you through this time that aren't bringing you joy. A lot of the times when we think about decluttering, we're only thinking about stuff. But also we have people in our life that are toxic. And that could be social media. I agree. I think social media is one of those toxic things that sometimes we just need to turn off. A third thing is to write it out. Write down what you're feeling. Write down how you are feeling that day, because sometimes it's just a means of just saying it. Like, I don't feel happy today. Why? Because sometimes you'll feel it, but then when you write down, you can't think of the reason why. So maybe you're just so used to saying it, but you don't actually feel that way. So writing it out is another thing that you can do to beat the blues. Put on your favorite playlist. It doesn't have to be holiday music. I always tell people, go to a decade or a time where you had some favorite music, some favorite songs, and put it on and just dance it out. Because music makes you feel good, but it also takes you back to a time where you could have had a better experience. The fifth one, I say, pick your battles. Don't sweat the small stuff. If you don't want to go to the Christmas party that you've always gone to, make a decision and don't do it. But you don't have to listen over and over to someone telling you that you're making the wrong decision. So just pick your battles, stick with your guns, and don't get into confrontations over little things. Help someone else. That goes along with volunteering. Get out of the house, go help someone, help an elderly neighbor, go help somebody put up their Christmas tree. If you don't have one in your house, but you can get out and you can help someone else. Exercise, and I'm not saying go to the gym. You could just go for a walk. But again, that's part of getting your body moving, getting your mind moving, taking your mind off of being lonely. 8 is set an alarm clock and stick with a sleep routine. That is very, very important, because when you have the holiday blues, you will more than likely not want to get up. So keep the same routine even on the weekends. That's very important to continue doing what you're doing and waking up at a good time so you're able to experience the day. 9 is just simply laugh. Laughter brings happiness. Watch an old sitcom or TV show or commercial or America's Funniest Home Videos, but just laughing will help you clear some of the blues. And then finally, if you can't seem to do anything that's shaking it, it's very important that you go seek some professional help, because it could be the blues, it could be seasonal depression, it could be something bigger. So if you've tried a lot of different things and you're still not shaking it, I would advise you to go seek some professional help.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you. I think I have us all back up on the screen. No, I don't. No, do I? Do I? Oh, yeah. Okay. There we go. All right. So, Donzell, I know you have like some things going on, and I want you to add like your closing thoughts about, professional help, because as people of color, we still struggle with seeking out professional help, therapists, our practices. While I think that probably all three of us are very busy, because there are not many people or practitioners who look like us, we still know there's such a great need, and some who don't even seek it out. What are your thoughts about kind of overcoming that? What are your thoughts about it?
Sure. So I think that it's always important to really be intentional about your overall health and wellness. So I mean, for you know, Black Americans, for instance, we have Therapy for Black Girls, which is an online directory of Black therapists all over. So I think I think starting there, reading different profiles, calling people, asking if you could just kind of have a conversation with them to learn more about their services and what their first appointment will look like, because that can take some of the edge off as well. And I think podcasts have become a huge, you know, bridge to connecting mental health services. So, I mean, she has a podcast, for instance, Therapy for Black Girls has a podcast, and I think that there's a lot of topics that are therapeutic in nature that can be a gateway into seeking services. I'm sure many people have probably messaged her. I would be surprised if she did not have a huge wait list because her podcast is so awesome.
Right.
and so I think it's that, and then even for Black men, there's a directory for us too, just call it Therapy for Black Men. So, seeking that out and doing the same thing. There's some really good podcasts for Black men, like the Hip Hop Social Worker, or you Good Bruh, or Let's Talk Bruh, or I think it's You Good Man is one, and then another one is like Let's Talk Bruh. And these are like all podcasts that are like centered around men's health and wellness, and just listening to others go through the same thing as yourself, you recognize that you're not alone, and as you hear them talk about therapy, it becomes normalized, and it strengthens one's curiosity and can really serve as a catalyst for healthy help-seeking behaviors. So I think those are like my final thoughts. But if you don't live in an area where there may be a person that looks like you, then I think having that conversation with that therapist, to just really see how culturally humble they are, to see how collaborative they are, because there are therapists who are culturally sensitive and are able to help you navigate your unique issues and still be validating and normalizing and empathetic, instead of being instead of dismissing your emotions or invalidating your emotions. I mean, that still happens, unfortunately, but I do think there's an increase of therapists who are really recognizing the importance of cultural humility and sensitivity, and really working towards that and centering their clients to be the expert of their own experience, and
Right.
letting them, lead the way.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, one of the great things that you said, and I appreciate that, about normalizing therapy, about how there are these great resources out there. Therapy for Black girls and therapy for Black kings and all of these different things. And I think those are definitely important because they start the conversation. They allow people to explore it in whatever stage of change that they are. And the other part of that is that you talked about, you don't always necessarily have to have a practitioner who looks like you when sitting across, and normalizing therapy, right? But I was just recently reading an article, and if you have to jump off, Donzell, feel free. But and I really appreciated another therapist who, before she became a therapist, was seeing a therapist and talked about having to constantly feel like she has to explain those feelings like racism or feeling of dread for Black men who are being killed in the streets. And the holiday season can be really, I think, familial for people of color, where we feel like we need to be connected with family. And when we don't have that, and we go into a space where we don't feel validated, or we feel like we have to explain that. And I have to spend 3 months explaining to my incredibly empathetic but Caucasian therapist about why I still go see my abusive mother who beat me with extension cords and feel like I need to be there, and at the same time try to be my authentic self. Can you talk to that, Aisha, if you have any feelings about it?
I feel everybody has their experience. And one thing that I learned when I was in child welfare is a lot of the times people think if we remove people from an unsafe situation, that everything is better all of a sudden. And 9 times out of 10, we would have children in care from the time that they were young. But then when they turned 18 and they aged out, or 21 and they aged out, they went right back home.
Right.
And what most people fail to realize is whether you had a traumatic experience or whether you just had an unusual family dynamic, that is still your family of origin. And there's still a sense of unconditional love, even if it sounds twisted to someone else. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times people are embarrassed to say, I went back, which is why women have a hard time confiding in their friends about their relationships, because they have that roller coaster relationship, and they'll say, oh my gosh, if my friends knew that I went back to them, they would kill me. And I said, well, why? And they say, because, he's cheated on me, or he's done that, or he hasn't, finished his schooling. And I say, well, you have to remember, first and foremost, that is your experience. And whatever you decide and whatever choices that you make, you have to live with that. So if it's something that you don't want to do and you're no longer proud of, we can work through that and how that's going to look. But if it's something that you want to go back to, we also work through that and see how that's going to look. Because it's not therapy is not cookie cutter. And I always tell people, if you're here for me to tell you what to do, you're in the wrong place. Right. I am just here to guide you through what you already know and empower you to make the best decision for yourself. And so if that involves going back to an abusive parent, going back to an abusive relationship, that is your journey, and that's what you'll do. And we'll talk about why you don't feel empowered to move on, or why you feel empowered to go back. But again, everybody's experience is different. And so when I meet with people of color, and they'll come to me and they'll say, well, I was looking for a woman of color. And they do say, I don't know if someone else could understand what I was coming from or what I was saying. Mm-hmm. And so I let them know that, yes, I see people of color, but I also see people not of color. And they feel just as comfortable. So I agree that it's about a fit. And sometimes a therapist has the best intention and is just not a good fit. And they could be Black. They could be Asian. Yes. They could be white.
Yes.
And so I just encourage people to just keep going until they find the good fit. Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't matter if the person looks like you, it still may not be a good fit.
Mm-hmm. So to close, I'm going to throw this out there because I had received this message, and it's kind of like the door on the handle experience for you both. As we both know, patients throw us a curveball as they're about to walk out the door. So I got this curveball message on this post about our today's show. The individual said, I'm 56 and my mother hates me. She beat on me 3 times in the last 11 months. She's busted my face, punched me, fattened my lips, and made me bleed, broken my glasses. When she done it, I'm the only one that's truly treated like this, and I'm the youngest. She beat on me as a teenager and I ran away at 15. I've forgiven her too many times, and there's so much more. Just maybe wonder why she would only treat one child like this out of all the 6 of us, and how to deal with that at a time when she would feel so ostracized to not be there with her mother, even with all of this dysfunction. Any advice for this particular viewer from either one of you? You can start, Aisha.
So, first and foremost, I always tell people, don't do things that are unsafe. If the situation is not safe and is not going to be safe, safety is paramount. And so they need to figure out whether going home would be a safety concern. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they have siblings. And so maybe they, meet with their siblings first and figure out like what is going to happen if mom starts to get out of hand. Will someone protect me? Will someone stand up for me? And also empowering that person when things are unsafe or uncomfortable, leave. Sometimes we stay in situations longer than we have to. And it's okay to just say, you know what? This isn't making me feel good, and I'm sure it's not making you feel good, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this situation. Mm-hmm. Because it sounds like they're going to go home anyway. So just making sure they have a plan of what can they do when they get in this situation. So if things go well, then you stay. If things don't go well, how are you going to leave? What does that look like? Who are you going to call? What are you going to do? So just having a plan in place to address any safety concerns, I think would be the best thing to do, because it sounds like they're going to go home anyway.
Right. Donzell, do you feel surprised by like this particular message, and that she expresses that she's 56, and some people will say, well, she's 56, she gets to make these decisions, so it's part of her, it's partly on her. What are your thoughts about this particular viewer's message? Donzell, are you still there? I think he left. Yes, Donzell's had to go, so he probably was like, let me get off of here. So I'm going to go to just us.
Funny, that's fine.
So yeah, I mean, Aisha, like you said, I mean, it's a no-brainer. We learned that the first part of our training is make sure that our patients are safe, right? That they are safe. She's 56, so she can be as safe as she chooses. I'm sure she benefits not just emotionally in some ways, or has some dependencies, some codependencies on mom being this way, and the holidays being such a challenging time, especially if you live with someone. But just getting out, getting safe, and figuring these things out. While it's family, it's still like an abusive relationship. It's like a woman or a man being in a domestic violent relationship and choosing to say, I got it in this, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how painful it is, no matter how much my kids need to see their grandmother or have a relationship with that grandmother. It's just like cutting off an infected limb in some ways. Would you agree?
It is, because although they need to see them and have a relationship, the trauma of the relationship is important too. So if they're seeing this negative relationship, this abusive relationship between their mother and their grandmother, that's just going to traumatize the holiday blues for them in the future. So we also have to make sure, in keeping with traditions, that we're not subjecting other family members to more traumatic events.
Right. Wrestling Superstar 83 says, I'm not surprised. Within the Black community, we idolize and respect our mothers, no matter how she treats us. Again, I agree with Aisha that safety is key for this particular client's experience. Thank you so much for that. And in some ways, in the Black community, we idolize our mother. I think in a lot of communities, that's just kind of been historically how we position our moms. I mean, I myself have that kind of like thing with my mom where we've had this conversation about absent moms versus absent dads. And my mom is an MSW. And she said, it's okay for dads to be absent, but kids can't not have a relationship with their mother. And I was like, wow, Mom. I was arguing with her. Like, how can you say that? That's ridiculous. Kid is just as equally important, but I think that there's a lot of social things to that. And I hope we can actually explore that, Aisha. I would love to talk with you at a later date about that, especially given your experiences in child welfare, about kids or even adults or communities' relationship to mom versus dad, and how that plays out over and over again, especially with abuse, especially with neglect, and yada yada yada. So thank you.
Yeah, that'd be good. There's a lot of stigma with that. So yes, that would be a great topic.
Yes, that's a truly great topic. Faye says, so true. Donzell and Aisha are both on spot. A nurse, P. Love, just said, I came on live and I'm a nurse. Faye says, as a family social worker, I saw this in Black and white families. The child felt that their parents needed them. Yeah. And even like in this particular 56-year-old's case, I'm sure in some ways they feel like their mother needs them, even if they do treat them badly. And this is a great and much needed discussion. Yeah, so Aisha, thank you for being on and going through all these steps. Tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can begin to get therapy, because you are also a virtual therapist like myself. You provide televirtual therapy, which is hopefully increased like your reach and ability to affect others. But tell people how they can reach you and your work.
So my practice is in Washington, D.C., but my email address is Aisha, AISHA .Martin at Woodley Park. That's Woodley, WOODLEY, parkclinical.com. And that's how they can email me. The website for my practice is woodleyparkclinical.com. And all you have to do is just email me, and we can make it work. I will say that this time of the year brings a lot of clients, so we'll find a time, even if it will be creative, but we'll make it work.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much. Put this on your calendar that in 2020 we'll be having this conversation. Now that we've gotten through the technical difficulties, I have to draft you for another show.
That's fine.
But thank you so much for taking the time. You have a great
You're welcome. You too. All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay. All right, thank you guys for sticking around. Hold up, what's the wide camera? All right, there we go. It's been such an incredible episode. I do apologize, like I said again, for starting late. I can't apologize enough. I think I'll just be going with my old faithful. As you probably see, I play around with cameras, and this is a one-man show, so sometimes it gets a little weird and a little strange in some ways, but this is like this is the show. So I'll see you all later. Hello? Oh. Yeah, I don't think this is...